Hello. I'm trying to use this diagram to approach the community of professional STEM educators and ask a question for some advice. And the question is essentially this. When you're delivering material which is very much centred around a diagram, does it or would it help if you could engage with the diagram in a really dynamic way, or maybe even finish it or create it or manipulate it as part of the delivery process? I'm hoping it might provide the opportunity to create a kind of narrative arc which would help with the teaching. So perhaps if I can just show you what I mean, I'll pretend to be a teacher and that will get my idea across. How could we find out the area of this circle? Well, perhaps we could start by dividing it up into 16 equal pieces. They're a bit like triangles, except they're really segments because they've got this curved edge. And if I cut one out, that one, I'm going to try putting 8 of them alongside each other in a row to see if that gets us anywhere. So what's we got? Something I've just noticed is that looks like it, if I got the other 8 and made the same shape upside down, they might fit together, which might be quite interesting. Shall we try that? I copy that one and then turn it upside down. Oh, didn't quite do that right. There we are, turned it upside down. Oh, it does look like they might fit together. Shall we try that? Yeah, if I go right down to the bottom, they should click together, I think. Yeah, there we are. Now that's quite interesting because I suppose you could describe that as a very lumpy rectangle, which is a pity. It's a pity it's lumpy, because if it were a rectangle, that would kind of solve the problem, because we know that for a rectangle the area is width times height. So could we make it less lumpy? I think that maybe if we use many more segments, a vast number of segments, that might turn it into a rectangle, but I'm not sure. Maybe we should try 60 instead of 16 and see what that looks like. I have saved a little bit of time by getting that ready. So here's the same thing, but 60 segments. And it looks like it actually is, using more segments is getting us much closer to it being a true rectangle. And I think we can safely assume that if we used a really massive number, it would be, to all intents and purposes, a rectangle. So really that leaves the question, do we know anything about what the width of this rectangle is and its height? So let's have a think about that. This series of curved lines that forms the top is a series of little curved parts which come from the circumference of the original circle. And in fact, the top edge represents half the circumference of the circle, and the bottom edge is the other half of the circumference. So we've kind of answered that, because I'm sure you know that half the circumference of a circle is pi times the radius. And with luck, there's a similar thing happening with the height, because providing we used a vast number of segments, the height of this segment would become the radius. It already is very close already, but it's sloping. But it wouldn't be sloping if they were infinitely thin, if you like. So then the area of that rectangle is pi times r, or pi times radius, which is pi r squared, which of course is the formula. And it helps us maybe remember where the formula came from, or even to work it out for ourselves sometimes. So as a very old comedian used to say, this is me, I'm no longer pretending to be a teacher. So to summarise, the point I'm trying to get across is, if you're trying to deliver material which is essentially a diagram, would it help to be able to engage in the way I just did with the diagram to create a story which will help draw the student along and follow? I've been thinking about this in general for different sorts of diagrams, not just geometry diagrams. And for example, here's another one that I've been mulling over, and it just shows how the width of potential for the idea, I think. This is for much older students. This is a college level computer science diagram. But what it has in common with the first one is that it's kind of telling a story. One might start with this one, and in fact, this one is derived from it in the style of a story. So to wrap up, the question I'm asking is, do you think being able to interact with a diagram like that would actually be helpful as part of teaching subject matter which is primarily diagrammatic? If not, can you suggest anything that the process or the experience you've just seen, how it could be different to actually make it useful? I'd be extremely grateful for your feedback on that. Thank you very much.